My name is Evelyn May Carter. They kicked me out before dinner, but they forgot whose name was on the deed. This house, my home, my sanctuary, was mine. Every corner, every brick, every painted wall held the weight of my life's work. And yet, I stood on the porch, shivering in the October wind, watching the door close behind me. The chill cut through my coat, but it wasn't the cold that shook me. It was betrayal, sharp, precise, and unrelenting. My own children had thought they could erase me. I remembered every sacrifice, sleepless nights, double shifts, birthdays celebrated on a tight budget, holidays spent making sure their lives were easier than mine. And now they acted as if none of it mattered. I hugged myself, trying to ground my racing thoughts. My mother's voice echoed from decades ago. Evelyn, life will knock you down. Stand tall. Let no one steal your peace, your dignity, your name. I breathed in deeply, letting the autumn air fill my lungs. Even as despair threatened to overwhelm me, I felt a spark ignite. They had forgotten one crucial fact. My name was on the deed. Every inch of that house was a testament to my strength, resilience, and sacrifices. They could close doors, but they could not erase me. I turned from the porch and walked slowly down the street. Shadows from the streetlights danced across the cracked sidewalks. Faces of neighbors peered out from windows, some curious, some judgmental, some silently sympathetic. I let it wash over me. I was humiliated, yes, but I was far from defeated. They think I am powerless, I whispered to myself. They are wrong. I am Evelyn May Carter, and they cannot erase me. Every step I took was fueled by memories of my past, the crowded Brooklyn apartment, the peeling paint, the leaky roof, yet filled with love, music, and laughter. My mother had worked 2 jobs, never letting anyone see her tears, teaching me resilience, perseverance, and the value of self-worth. Those lessons were etched into my bones. I arrived at the corner store, seeking warmth and a moment to collect my thoughts. The aroma of coffee greeted me, grounding me in the present. I sat by the window, letting the warmth seep into my hands as memories flooded back. My first job at 14, my late-night study sessions, the nights I worked 2 jobs to put food on the table. All of it had led me here, to this moment of ultimate betrayal, but also the threshold of reclaiming my life. By the time I finished my coffee, I had made a silent vow. I would reclaim my home, not with vengeance, but with justice, strategy, and the resilience that had been honed over decades. My name was on that deed, and no one, not even my own flesh and blood, could take that away. The night had swallowed me, but the city's lights still flickered like distant stars. I walked the streets in disbelief, trying to make sense of what had just happened. My own children, my flesh and blood, had thought they could erase me from my life, from my home, from everything I had built. I stopped under a street lamp, letting the light fall on my face. My coat was thin, and the chill cut through me, but it wasn't the cold that made my body tremble. It was the sheer weight of betrayal. I thought of the countless nights I stayed awake, worrying about their futures. I remembered the meals I had cooked, the homework I had helped with, the arguments I had mediated, the sacrifices I had made silently so that they could have more. And now, they acted as if none of it mattered. I wandered aimlessly, past corner stores and closed diners, listening to the echo of my own footsteps. Every memory of the life I had built, every hardship I had overcome, flashed through my mind like lightning. The eviction was not just the loss of a house. It was an attempt to erase my existence, my legacy. Yet, somewhere in the depth of despair, a spark ignited. I realized that anger was not enough. I needed clarity, strategy, and resilience. My mother's voice echoed in my mind again. Evelyn, the world will always try to break you. The measure of a person is not in falling, but in rising again, higher than before. I remembered Brooklyn,
The cramped apartments, the peeling paint, the nights I slept on the floor because there wasn't enough room for all of us. My mother working 2 jobs, my father absent more often than not. The racism, the hunger, the struggle. That life had forged me. It had shaped me into a woman who would not be broken by betrayal, even if it came from the people she loved most. By the time I returned to the small apartment of a trusted friend, I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. But the exhaustion brought clarity. I began to make a mental list of allies, strategies, and next steps. I remembered the lawyer I had worked with years ago, the old neighbors who respected me, and the community members who had always been quietly loyal. I had a plan forming. It would not be easy. It would test every ounce of patience, every shred of courage I had left. But I was Evelyn May Carter. I had survived more than most could imagine. I would survive this too, and I would triumph.
I closed my eyes and let the city fade around me. My mind traveled back decades to the narrow hallways of my childhood apartment in Brooklyn, where the walls were thin, the floors creaked, and the scent of fried chicken mingled with damp laundry. Poverty had been a constant companion, but so had love, determination, and the hum of my mother's unwavering voice. I remembered my first job at 14, delivering newspapers before school. The early mornings had been brutal, the cold seeping through my thin coat, but the coins I earned gave me a sense of pride and independence I would never forget. Those mornings taught me discipline, responsibility, and the power of persistence. High school had been no sanctuary either. I was often the target of cruelty, classmates mocking my skin, my clothes, my family's meager circumstances. Racism was subtle at times and blatant at others, but it never defeated me. Each insult, each shove, each whispered remark became fuel. I learned to read people quickly, to anticipate the sting of prejudice, and to rise above it with grace and cunning. By the time I turned 18, I had worked multiple jobs, excelled in school, and saved every dollar I could. My mother, who had given everything to keep our family afloat, instilled in me a quiet yet unshakable strength. "Evelyn," she said one night, exhaustion in her voice, "life will knock you down, but you will get up, every time, and when you do it with your head high." Those words became my mantra. Through college, through heartbreak, through jobs that barely paid the bills, I carried them with me. I learned that strength was not the absence of fear, but the courage to move forward despite it. I thought of the first apartment I rented with my own earnings, a small, modest place, but it was mine. I painted it, cleaned it, and made it a home. Every achievement, every small victory had been won through resilience. And now, decades later, that same resilience would guide me through the most painful betrayal of my life. As I sat on the worn couch at my friend's apartment, I realized something profound. My life had been a series of battles, and each one had shaped the woman I had become. The eviction was merely another battle, and this time the stakes were my dignity, my legacy, and the home that carried my name. I clenched my fists, feeling a familiar fire ignite in my chest. This fire had been with me since childhood, through every hardship, every obstacle, every injustice. It was my armor, my weapon, my guide. And now it would carry me through the fight to reclaim what was rightfully mine. The morning after that sleepless night, I sat quietly in my friend's small kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. The city outside was waking, indifferent to my pain, yet filled with the potential for action. I knew that anger alone would not restore my home. Strategy, wisdom, and patience would. Over the decades, life had taught me more lessons than any classroom ever could. I had learned to read people, their motives, their desires, their weaknesses. I had learned the difference between those who would stand by me and those who would vanish when the winds changed. And I had learned the power of silence. Sometimes saying nothing,
Observing and planning quietly was more potent than a shouted declaration. I thought of the small group of friends and mentors who had always believed in me. Mrs. Jefferson, my old neighbor, had once warned me, "Evelyn, there will always be those who try to take what's yours. But remember, knowledge and patience are your strongest allies." Those words had guided me through boardroom meetings, college exams, and life's countless betrayals. I reached for the papers I had tucked carefully into my coat pocket. Old deeds, letters, bills, evidence of every payment, every renovation, every effort I had made to maintain my home. They were more than paper. They were proof of my life, my labor, and my integrity. And they would become the foundation of my fight. By mid-morning, I began mapping out my next steps. I would contact my lawyer, an older man who had once handled a complicated case for me years ago. He was meticulous, methodical, and above all, fair. I would reach out to neighbors, to anyone who knew my story, and to community leaders who had always respected me. This was not a battle I would fight alone, though the strength had to come from within me first. Sitting there, I realized that every hardship I had endured, from poverty to heartbreak to discrimination, had prepared me for this moment. I had learned that true power was not about anger or brute force. It was about persistence, dignity, and the ability to rise calmly in the face of injustice. I made a quiet promise to myself. I would reclaim my home, not for revenge, but for justice. I would teach those who doubted me a lesson in resilience and integrity, and I would show my children and the world that a lifetime of strength cannot be undone by betrayal.
Days turned into nights, and the cold reality of homelessness settled over me like a heavy fog. I had faced hardship before, yes, but never this, being forced out of my own home, stripped of the place that had witnessed decades of my life. Every familiar corner, every painted wall, every memory of laughter and tears had been taken from me. I stayed at shelters, in friends' spare rooms, and occasionally on park benches when no other option existed. The nights were long, filled with the hum of distant traffic and the occasional shouting that pierced the darkness. Pride wrestled with survival. Each day was a battle to maintain dignity while grappling with humiliation. But even in despair, I refused to vanish. I recalled my mother's teachings. Strength is measured not by how you avoid hardship, but by how you rise when it finds you. Those words were my lifeline. Every step I took, every door I knocked on, reminded me that I had survived worse, and I would survive this. During those nights on the streets, I observed people. Some had given up. Some fought silently with a fire that matched mine. I learned lessons in humanity, in empathy, in courage, and in resilience. I realized that even when stripped of comfort, one could retain dignity, and that dignity would become my shield. I often walked past my own house, hidden in shadows, watching my children through the windows. The betrayal stung anew, but it also fueled my resolve. I began keeping meticulous notes, names, dates, events, every detail that could later support my fight. I was planning, quietly, methodically, and the fire within me refused to die. It was during these lowest moments that I discovered the unexpected kindness of strangers. A woman at the shelter offered me a warm meal and a place to sit without judgment. A neighbor I barely knew whispered words of encouragement. "Evelyn, don't let them see you fall. You're stronger than they'll ever understand." These moments reminded me that even in darkness, light existed, sometimes in the form of strangers who believed in justice. By the time I reached my 55th year, I had endured enough to understand a profound truth. Hardship shapes, but it does not define. I would not be broken. My home, my name, and my dignity were not just property. They were extensions of the life I had built, and no betrayal could erase them. As I lay in the shelter that night, exhausted yet resolute, I whispered to myself, "I have been broken before. I have risen before, and I will rise again. This is not the end. This is the beginning of reclaiming everything that is mine." The first glimmer of hope arrived like a whisper in the dark. One morning, while shuffling through paperwork and receipts I had salvaged from my home, I reached out to an old lawyer, Mr. Thompson, a man whose wisdom and meticulous nature I had respected for years. I explained my situation, my voice steady despite the tremor of emotion underneath. He didn't flinch. He didn't question my credibility. Instead, he listened, nodded, and said simply, "Evelyn, we will set this right. You know your rights, and I know the law. Together, we will fight." That single promise ignited a new wave of determination. For the first time in weeks, I felt that surge of power I had always known, the power to reclaim what was mine. Next, I turned to my neighborhood, to those who had seen me toil and thrive for decades. Mr. Jefferson, the retired school teacher who had watched me grow from a struggling girl into a strong woman, offered his unwavering support. He introduced me to other community members who had faced similar injustices, people who believed in fairness and the strength of persistence. I began to realize that strength was not just personal, it was also collective. Allies mattered. Those who understood your character, who had witnessed your life, could become extensions of your resolve. Together, we formed a quiet network. Neighbors, friends, mentors, and even a few distant relatives who believed that betrayal did not define me. Meanwhile, I honed my legal strategy. Every document, every bill, every proof of renovation and payment became crucial. I organized them meticulously, knowing that the courtroom would demand precision, clarity, and irrefutable evidence. I would face my own children there, and I needed every detail accounted for. Through this process, I discovered an unexpected strength within myself. Years of struggle had taught me patience, observation, and strategic thinking. I was no longer reacting to betrayal with only anger. I was planning, calculating, and preparing for the moment when justice would finally prevail. Even in moments of exhaustion, when doubt crept in, I reminded myself, "Evelyn, you have faced worse. You have survived worse. You are stronger than anyone knows, and you will not falter now." By the end of the month, we had a plan. Mr. Thompson would file the legal motions, the neighbors would document their observations, and I would stand firm, voice unwavering, dignity intact. My network was ready, my strategy was clear, and my heart, though scarred, was stronger than ever. The courthouse loomed before me, its stone facade imposing, yet not as daunting as the challenge within. I clutched my briefcase tightly, filled with meticulously organized papers, deeds, receipts, photographs, and letters, each a testament to the life I had built with my own hands. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and tension. My children sat across the room, faces a mixture of defiance and uncertainty. Their lawyers were well-prepared, confident, and unyielding. But I was ready. I was Evelyn May Carter, and I had faced storms far stronger than this. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. Every eye was on us. Every whisper halted. My heart pounded, but I focused on the task at hand. This was not just about property. It was about justice, dignity, and truth. Mr. Thompson began presenting our case. He methodically laid out the evidence, the deeds in my name, the proof of payments, the renovations I had funded, and the countless documents showing my ownership. He spoke with authority, unwavering in the face of opposition. My children's lawyers countered, attempting to cast doubt, to twist facts, to frame me as unreasonable. But I remained calm. I had rehearsed this in my mind countless times. I answered questions with clarity and composure, speaking not just for myself, but for the principles that had guided my life. Throughout the proceedings, I glimpsed faces of neighbors and friends who had come to support me. Their presence reminded me that I was not alone. I had built a life of integrity, and it shone through every word, every document, every silent gaze. The tension escalated as witnesses were called, each corroborating my story. My mother's teachings echoed in my mind. Stand tall, Evelyn. Let truth and courage guide you. Do not let fear or anger control you. Hours turned into days. The courtroom became a battlefield of facts, emotions, and strategy.
Each objection, each counterpoint tested my patience and resolve. And yet, every challenge only strengthened my determination. I was not just fighting for a house. I was fighting for the life I had built, the sacrifices I had made, and the legacy that could not be erased by betrayal. By the final day, the weight of the battle pressed on everyone in the room. But I stood firm, my posture straight, my voice steady, my heart resolute. Justice was not given lightly, but I knew it was within reach. The courtroom felt quieter now, though the tension was no less intense. Days of arguments, testimonies, and cross-examinations had left me exhausted, yet a strange clarity had settled over me. I was standing at the edge of a storm, fully aware that the final decision would determine more than the ownership of a house. It would affirm the truth of my life's work, my sacrifices, and my dignity. I sat quietly during a brief recess, closing my eyes and remembering the countless nights I had spent planning, working, and surviving. From Brooklyn's cramped apartments to the long hours I endured as a teenager, from college struggles to building my own home, every challenge had prepared me for this moment. I had faced betrayal before, had been underestimated, and yet had risen stronger each time. Mr. Thompson approached, a reassuring presence amid the tension. "Evelyn, you've done everything right. Your evidence is solid, your testimony is unwavering. Now it's just a matter of waiting." I nodded, feeling the weight of anticipation settle into my bones. Waiting was agonizing. My children sat across the room, their expressions guarded, unsure, perhaps even beginning to understand the depth of their actions. I did not feel hatred, only a quiet determination and a resolve to see justice done. During that pause, I reflected on what I had learned from life. Strength was not about being unyielding in anger. It was about maintaining dignity, patience, and clarity under pressure. It was about knowing your worth, even when the world tried to deny it. And I knew, deep down, that I was right. Neighbors and friends, quietly present in the gallery, offered silent support. Their eyes, filled with respect and understanding, reminded me that my life had built a foundation far larger than this courtroom. I was not alone, and my story mattered. As the judge returned and the room grew still, I took a deep breath. I allowed myself a moment of quiet reflection, remembering my mother's teachings, my past victories, the battles I had fought, and the resilience that had carried me through decades. I was Evelyn May Carter. I was strong, I was prepared, and I would face whatever came next with unwavering courage. The moment stretched, each second heavier than the last, until finally the judge began to speak. My heart pounded, but my posture remained steady. This was the climax, the culmination of every hardship, every strategy, every act of courage I had carried through my life. The courtroom was silent, every eye fixed on the judge as he adjusted his glasses and began to speak. My heart raced, but my breathing remained steady. I had fought long and hard for this moment, and now it was time for truth to prevail. After a pause that felt like an eternity, the judge spoke. After reviewing all evidence, testimonies, and documentation, it is clear that the property in question is legally and rightfully owned by Evelyn May Carter. Any attempts to dispossess her are invalid. Full ownership and all associated rights are hereby restored to Miss Carter. A wave of relief washed over me, stronger than any I had ever felt. I wanted to scream, to cry, to laugh, but I held my composure. Every struggle, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt had led to this vindication. I looked across the room at my children. Their faces were pale, a mixture of shock, guilt, and recognition. They had underestimated me, underestimated the life I had built, underestimated the strength that had carried me through 55 years of hardship. Now the truth was undeniable. I had endured, I had persevered, and I had triumphed. Mr. Thompson nodded at me, a small, satisfied smile on his face. The neighbors and friends who had supported me silently over the weeks in the courtroom gave subtle, respectful nods of acknowledgement. I had not fought alone, but I had carried the moral weight of justice in my heart. As I stepped out of the courthouse, the autumn air felt warmer, the city brighter. The sun broke through the clouds in a golden beam that felt almost symbolic. My home awaited me, every brick and every memory intact, a testament to my strength and perseverance. I walked through the familiar streets, reflecting on everything I had learned, that resilience cannot be taken, that dignity is unbreakable, and that justice, though sometimes delayed, can be restored when met with courage, persistence, and truth. For the first time in weeks, I smiled freely. I whispered softly to myself, I am Evelyn May Carter. I have faced betrayal, hardship, and despair. Yet, I am here. I am whole. I am victorious.
The door to my home swung open, and I stepped inside, letting the familiar warmth wrap around me. Every wall, every corner, every small imperfection was a testament to my life, my labor, and my perseverance. I had been away too long, forced into the cold, stripped of what was mine, but now justice had returned me to the place I belonged. I wandered through the room slowly, touching the furniture, the photographs on the walls, and the little mementos of a life lived with integrity and love. Each object told a story of struggle, of joy, of survival. I allowed myself to feel the full weight of relief and pride. This was not just a house. It was a symbol of resilience, of every challenge I had overcome, of every injustice I had met with courage. Sitting in my favorite chair, I reflected on the lessons life had taught me. I had learned that betrayal could come from the most unexpected places, that strength is forged in fire, and that dignity must be preserved even in despair. I had learned that patience, strategy, and clarity of purpose are powerful allies. And I had learned that allies, friends, neighbors, and mentors are invaluable when life tests your limits. My children came to speak with me later, their expressions a mix of regret, shame, and understanding. We did not resolve everything that day, but a seed of recognition had been planted. They saw, finally, the depth of their actions and the enduring power of the woman they had underestimated. As evening fell, I stepped onto the porch, the autumn wind cool against my face. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, savoring the moment. I was Evelyn May Carter. I had survived poverty, prejudice, heartbreak, and betrayal. I had faced the cold streets, the courtroom, and my own doubts. And now, I had reclaimed not only my home, but my dignity and my voice. I whispered into the night, life will test us all, but it is how we respond that defines us. I am stronger, wiser, and whole. My story is my power, and it will guide me forward. For the first time in a long time, I felt complete. Justice had been restored, not merely in law, but in spirit. I had fought, I had endured, and I had triumphed. And in that triumph, I found peace, strength, and hope for the future.